Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Dr. Mara Kalani, a palliative care doctor. And we were speaking about, let's change the subject slightly.
Oh, okay.
Let's find out
about hospice care. That's
well,
kind of our segue, I think, maybe into that, because the patients are in the ICU and they're hearing palliative care, but there is the extension of palliative care which goes down to hospice care. So what is the difference between palliative and then moving on into hospice care?
There's a big difference. So palliative care can coincide with the standard of care that the patient is receiving ongoing. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you have a patient who has a serious cancer and they're receiving chemotherapy, but palliative care has been involved because this patient has been emotional, she's had very complicated pain and other symptoms, and she's had some issues in regards to her social structure, and so she needs a lot more support. But she's on the road to recovery. She's on the road to having her cancer go into remission. And so palliative care is coinciding to help with her symptoms, provide an extra layer of support, and coincide with the care that her other doctors are providing. So that's palliative care. Sometimes these patients who have more serious conditions that become terminal, then palliative care transitions into hospice. Mm-hmm. Because the patient is now considered terminal, and by the hospice criteria, it's actually a Medicare guideline. Their prognosis is 6 months or less, and they have to have a documented terminal illness. So hospice is really reserved for those patients who are really truly at their end of life. Palliative care is not restricted for patients who are at end of life.
I see.
And that's a big difference.
That is a big difference.
And it's important for our patients to know that, and for our community to know that, because palliative care, in its proper ways of being interpreted and being practiced, is such that palliative care coincides with the care of the patient and really gets to understand who the patient is and match up treatments and helps with the support based on each individual and what is their quality of life.
Interestingly enough, with my patients, hospice is end-of-life care.
That's right.
And, I delineate with my patients in the discussion what they want in life. And when they have a disease or a problem that is bringing them toward that end of life, then we have that discussion. Are we there? And at that point, when they say, I am there, they go on hospice. Especially if there's pain and suffering and discomfort, they are going on hospice. But for my patients in the intensive care unit, that's understandable and it's there. But like I told you, I have patients who are outpatients, and that happens to them also.
Yes.
And so I can proudly say that, my patients aren't lingering for 6 months. I know to a certain degree when they're down to like a week or a few days. Mm-hmm. And I can then say, okay, you're suffering now and we got to take care of that.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I think it should be used. But, the whole idea about end of life and that we're having laws in the state of California concerning doctor-assisted suicide, blah, 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 all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's out there and you can question it. But for me, how I practice, and I think it's appropriate, I've seen it work, that we end of life hospice care is really at the end of life. And to have palliative care do what we need to do to assure and make sure everything is in place for those last few days and maybe week or so, that's the important part. The bad part is it's not always happening, is it?
No, it isn't. So what you're saying really is the person is ill, mm-hmm. and is very depressed and possibly not doing what he, quote, he or she should be doing to keep going,
Motivated, right.
motivated,
maintained.
right, maintained, right. So that person or persons taking care of that ill person, is that when the palliative care doctor comes in to assist in that?
Well, it's actually a whole team. So we never say that a palliative care doctor can do this individually. It has to be within a team structure, because
see.
the physician works alongside a nurse, a social worker, and chaplain to really take care of the patient on a whole person level. It's a holistic way of approaching care. And for instance, oftentimes, I may not be writing prescriptions for medications to assist in symptom management, but sometimes we're acting as cheerleaders or motivators to help our patients and families really continue down that journey, down that path towards the maintenance of their disease, and helping with their support. Listen, caregiving, especially in this day and age, is super complicated, and it's rigorous work, and it's not very well funded. And our caregivers need the support as well.
Oh, yeah.
And just bouncing ideas off of individuals is such a great strategy that it's been found to we are able to step back, take an objective picture of the scenario, and help our caregivers provide the care for the patient.
It's like a support group, and that's what you want to try to have with your patients.
So that's more of what palliative care is,
Right.
a team of support persons.
And then when it comes down to hospice, though, it's the same thing.
Okay,
Same
It's
support,
it's the
but at the
same
end
kind
of life.
support. But it is truly end of life. And at that
Okay.
point, dependent on the situation, that's where we're using medication to help out, to help alleviate their pain and discomfort, and sometimes even their anxiety in that process. You know, the process in life has that beginning and that end. Nobody goes beyond that end. So we all have to expect the end to come at some point. You just have to be mentally prepared. And life starts to give you those signs and symptoms that, oh, I'm getting older. And at some point in life, it's up to the medical professionals to say, okay, you are getting there. And then it's up to us again to say, you are there. And that's what we have to allow our seniors, our society to recognize. And the way the system, the healthcare system is now, we're not allowing that to happen for a lot of our patients. That's why you're on the show today, and that's why we're trying to bring this to you. I think it's an important idea that allows many people to move forward and not be afraid.
And it's a constant evolving process. One day you may be suffering with the early onset of Alzheimer's, and you're dealing with Alzheimer's through some periods of years. You're taking your medications, but let's say that patient then starts to slow down. Again, the caregiver is now really a key person in caring for that individual with Alzheimer's. And we need to take care of not only the patient, but the caregiver as well, and the whole family, or whoever is that's actually involved in caring for that patient. And as the effects of Alzheimer's continue to slow that person down, functionality-wise, memory-wise, whatever it is, the palliative care aspect of caring for that person becomes more and more involved. But the important thing is that it coincides with the care that the primary care physician is providing, the neurologist is providing, the geriatrician is providing. Whoever those providers are, it's all a collaborative effort.
Doctors' skills, I think, for the doctors you and I have seen and know, are limited. And not just a time factor, too. They're limited because that's their personality.
Absolutely.
So, but enhancing their skills through palliative care makes a big difference. And giving the support, especially to their advocates and caregivers, is so important to helping that patient as they're moving toward end of life.
That's correct. It's really this is a field of medicine that's going to continue to evolve and grow because more of our patients are living with chronic illness and they're living much longer with chronic illness.
That's very true. Very true.
And we're doing such a remarkable job at taking care of our patients. It's amazing to me. I never thought that I'd ever meet somebody who was 94 and still a smoker, for instance.
George Burns.
You know,
100.
That's right. You're right.
It's a pretty rare event.
It's rare.
But I'm seeing that more and more because we are doing such a phenomenal job in caring for our patients. So we're doing well in that aspect, but we're not doing so well on the quality aspect and the quality of life aspect.
Well, I think a lot of that, at least in my opinion, if you've taken good care of yourself, you've eaten correctly, you don't do foolish things that would harm you, and as you're going forward, the fact that you have taken good care of yourself is what is enhancing your quality of life, especially as you get older.
Genetics play a role in it as well, and because sometimes we do everything we can with the exercise and the correct food and things like that, but the genes stop us in our tracks.
Okay.
Right? And so
Okay. Well, that's true because both of my parents died when they were 70. And when I turned 70, I was literally scared to death. I really was. And I had been thinking about it for several years. And I started taking much better care of myself physically. I did more exercise. I ate properly. And I made it through that 70th year. And I'm thinking, okay, now I can move forward. I made it past age 70 because that's when Mom and Dad died.
Yeah. So yeah, genetics to end up playing a role. We're talking with Dr. Kalani, who's the director of palliative care at Providence Holy Cross, and one of the fears of our patients when they hear palliative care or hospice care, at least the family members in an ICU setting, is, hey, you're just trying to kill my loved one. You know, I don't want that. No, you're not coming on board. That is a fear and a thought that society has now pushed forward, and some people just will not want a group of people coming on board with them. How do you handle that?
Education. I have to, first and foremost, educate my providers, my physician colleagues, and my nurses who are taking care of patients in the hospital. And one of the things that I like to do at Holy Cross in particular is to invite our nurses and physicians into a family conference so they can actually see how our team works and how we talk with our patients and families. We're not the Grim Reapers. We're not here to.
Well, you are the messenger, so you don't want to be blamed for the ongoing problem.
Absolutely not. We're here to help understand what our families understand, because oftentimes they have no idea what's going on with their loved one. So sometimes we just interpret some of the information that is provided to them. Would you understand the word erythema? Or would you understand? Exactly. You're shaking your head. No. Would you understand a pneumothorax?
That wasn't me shaking my head.
No, Dr. Dorio is yes. No, he is.
Erythema?
Exactly. A
Erythema.
pneumothorax or a hydrothorax or encephalopathy.
But those are terms
So those are terms that our physician colleagues will use very loosely, expecting our patients and families to understand.
And
So-
many times the family members, because they would be embarrassed
Exactly.
at not knowing
They
it,
won't ask.
don't ask the question.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
What does that mean? Exactly. Exactly.
I've never heard of some of those words.
So it's used quite frequently in the hospital setting in particular. And we find that we're the interpreters of the ailments. We're the people who make sure that our patients and families understand their illness and what are the repercussions of that illness, what treatments are available for that illness, and what pathway are we going to go.
Yeah. And there's no way to prepare for this either.
No.
Because when somebody gets sick, goes into the hospital, they're sitting there, and you know, even the doctors are trying to do diagnostic tests, and then it might take 24, 48 hours to say, oh, this is what you have, and then all of a sudden that's foreign. You're getting online, trying to find these things out, what's going on, how do you treat it, all this stuff, but it's all foreign. And then to try to work your way through all of this gets pretty difficult. And you need the other eyes and ears to help you out, to reinterpret and to give you better conversation and understanding in this discussion.
Absolutely.
I'm getting quite an education here.
Yes.
But that's the way, it's a sad thing with all the technology. I still think it comes down to the basics of life. And, you know, there's been a separation of this conversation for a long time between doctors and patients. And doctors have stood the higher ground and said, this is what you got, and, you know, erythema is what you got, and you're going to die from it. Well, but you won't. But you know, you don't understand. And that's been the level of how that communication has proceeded, and that has to stop.
Right.
We have to change literally the culture of how this is going. So the palliative care team has now pretty much like an interventional team. And we talked about PTSD. And so this is intervention. This is an intervention to try to get people that understand better what the ongoing problems are. But it still goes back to a discussion that should take place when you're 60 years old or 50 years old.
Right.
And I do think that it should be a rule when you go on Medicare, it has to take place.
So that's so interesting, because I was listening to this program this morning about a very famous breast surgeon out of Mount Sinai in New York City, and she had, you know, so the interviewer was asking her, so what are your recommendations in regards to screening for breast cancer? And she said, bottom line, end of discussion, mammography is the way to go every year from age 40 on. Done. So in the sense, that's kind of what I would have to say in regards to advanced care planning. Advanced care planning and an advanced directive needs to be done, bottom line, end of discussion. There is just no way around it. We have to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's incredible, but that doesn't happen. So how do we make it happen?
We got to change the culture.
Yes.
But, you know, I just don't think we're going to change the doctors. No. So, like I said, this is intervention. This is PTSD intervention, and we put the palliative care team in there to bring up the topics and put them forward into an understandable way. And I think we are doing that now.
Isn't that wonderful? And we need to take a break. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Dr. Mara Kalani, who is a palliative care doctor. And my goodness, what an education you have given us here and our listeners.
Thank you.
Palliative care.
But, you know, I was just thinking about this, though, that palliative care is in the hospital, but, you know, here we're in Newhall on Main Street. Why wouldn't we have an office called Palliative Care here in Santa Clarita? Why wouldn't we have a place where people who are not getting this discussion with their doctors, why can't we have a place opened up and give them that discussion? I mean, you got to get somebody to pay the people who are in the office.
Hiccup.
But, you know, that should be a part of a service that is offered for those in Santa Clarita.
Okay, doesn't that go along with having a Department of Aging in the Santa Clarita Valley?
Very good, and that's what we have.
Beautiful.
We have offered.
Yeah.
We have, here on this show, we have said that Santa Clarita needs a Department of Aging. haven't we,
Yes,
for
absolutely.
years now.
Absolutely.
And
I
With
mean,
all
look
the
at
communities in this neighborhood.
And look at the size of this valley and of this city and outlying areas. It's growing exponentially.
Absolutely.
It really is. And we need more services out here for seniors. And that would happen.
Well, and we have
the
services,
Department of Aging.
but you want to put them under one umbrella.
Absolutely.
That's a big term.
So that there's a little more cohesiveness. And
Absolutely.
palliative care would come under
One
that.
phone number, call there, and they will triage you to
That's right.
wherever you need to go. But we don't have that, and everybody's piecemeal. And as a physician who goes out to the community, I kind of know about these places. But I know at City Hall right now, this show is being heard, broadcast over the third floor, and I want the City Council to hear this, that we need a Department of Aging, and we need to not just talk about it during the campaigns and just before November elections, or it used to be April, I think. But we need to talk about Department of Aging for our seniors in Santa Clarita, because I think we're 21% of the population. We have like 25,000, or we have thousands of seniors even living around here.
That's
We
true.
need to do this. So Barbara, get out your picket sign.
Well, I'm good at
I
that.
bet you'd have a lot of volunteer staff.
We get a lot of people out there. I think it's something that other cities have. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. Let's just get started on this.
Well, is that something that the groups of doctors would be instrumental in assisting in?
They don't have enough time to do anything now.
They don't.
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
biggest problem.
That's the
Barb.
biggest problem.
And as we talked about in palliative care exists because of lack of communication from doctor to patient. And if we didn't do this, I think a lot of people would suffer. And the thing is, we just have to do it in the right way. And I think Providence Holy Cross has this down. They understand that. They have you leading the way with that great understanding of when and where it is needed. And I think we have to promote that so our seniors who are listening now also say, yeah, I'm ready for that discussion and conversation. Let's go for it. My PTSD is out there. I'm going. I need that support group to help me out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be a part of Providence Holy Cross. I think that they've really taken the initiative on the Providence level, health and systems. They've really taken the initiative to tackle this and make it at the forefront. Mm-hmm. It's just as important as the beginning of life. Is to deal with the end of life and everything in the middle.
Correct.
That's right. Everything in the middle, from birth to death.
And, from birth to death, we live life and we have quality of life. And we have to make sure that in that process that everything hopefully goes smoothly. But when it doesn't go smoothly and you don't understand it, that's a big problem. And that's, I think, what you guys are doing at your hospital. And that's great. Thanks for being on the show again,
Thank you
Dr.
so
Kalani.
much. Yes, thank you
as
so much.
usual,
Very
just
good.
a super show, a super effort to get the word out. And we do that. You do that at Holy Cross. We get the city to do the Department of Aging. Hey, a little bit of strength here, Barbara, with that picket sign of yours.
In front of City Hall.
In front of
Yes.
City Hall. That's what we have to keep doing. We have to keep making sure the third floor over at City Hall is listening to us.
That's right.
Got that? Once again, thanks for being on the show.
Yes.
Again, Barbara, for always bringing out topics and the effort to make sure that our seniors are getting a better understanding of who they are and where they are. We are
Absolutely.
sponsored by Advanced Audiology and In-Home Care Santa Clarita. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.